I love an epic tale, and ever since I started listening to audiobooks, it's like I'm always on an adventure.
So how can something full of so many stories sometimes feel so empty?
Don't get me wrong, audiobooks are the solution for a busy schedule or never-ending to-do list. They've been a game changer for me.
Chapter 35.
Letting me read while driving, doing dishes, building, or just going on a walk. I'm consuming more stories than ever before, but this means my physical library hasn't grown at all. My bookshelves, they're filled with books from when I was young, some of my favorites, some of the old classics, but they're missing out on all the adventures I've been on since switching to audio. So today, we're gonna build a miniature library dedicated entirely to my audiobooks. Here's the plan. I'm gonna curate a selection of books from my audio library. We're then going to gather all the cover art for each of those, miniaturize them through some software, cut them out, and assemble them into books. Sure, I could go out and buy a copy of every book I've ever listened to, but I've already paid for them once. Plus, space is at a premium, so a miniature library makes total sense. And who doesn't love toning things? Really, all I want is to be able to have some sort of trophy or symbol that I've conquered these stories or I've been on these adventures. As a bonus, this whole library is going to need a place to live, so I'm going to build an ancient wizard book nook that I'm going to put back on my shelf. Let's select our books. Now, I listen on Audible, but Goodreads is where I track everything. What I enjoyed, what I want to listen to. It's just much easier to organize everything, so I'll pull those up first. Oh, you mean Amazon's two apps that don't talk to each other? Yeah. Kindle syncs with Goodreads instantly. You finish a book and boom, it updates. But Audible? Nothing. You spend 40 hours on a fantasy epic and then still have to log into Goodreads and check a box manually. It's not the end of the world. Not the end of the world. This is Amazon. They own both. They could fix this with a couple lines of code. But instead, we're all out here copy and pasting like it's 2005. This is why I usually keep these thoughts to myself. But my criteria for these books are, I have to be willing to recommend them, they have to be in my audio library, and I can't already own the full-size version. This is for the ones that live purely in my head and my headphones. If you're watching this and you also love audiobooks, feel free to play along. Let me know in the comments your top 3 favorite books that you'd want on your own miniature shelf. So here's a few selections that I've chosen for my shelf. I've gone through and selected around 50 titles. However, that number may change when we get into actually finding the cover art for these. When I initially started this project, I thought this next part would be one of the easiest steps, right? Just pull them up on the interwebs, find all the cover art, download it, put it together and print it. That was not the case. If you've got a resource that you can let me in on, let me know for sure, because I could not find it. I'm sure it's some copyright, something that they don't have the entire cover online available for download. Makes sense, but that's what we need to find. So we are going to have to turn to physical sources and manually find all of the covers and take pictures of each of those. To collect these pictures, I'm headed out into the real world.
But as you know, it's a dangerous business when you step out your door. There's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
I'm going on an adventure!
This process is pretty straightforward. I'm just finding the books in Barnes & Noble that I've listened to and I have in my Audible library. The biggest disappointment here was I couldn't find all the books that I have in my Audible. I even visited a library later to try and find some more books, but wasn't able to find very many there either. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to use as many books on this project as I wanted. And like you do, I had to hit the wizarding section before I left. Back from our adventures, let's dive in and edit these covers. Now, I'm gonna jump in here and show you exactly how I did it. I'm sure there's tons of different ways that you could do this, lots of free versions that don't require the software I'm going to use. I know you could even do a lot of this inside of your phone. So don't feel limited, but if you wanna follow along with my process, I'm gonna dive in and give you more of a step-by-step on how I did this. I'm going to jump into Lightroom to start these edits. Now, I photographed these in RAW. If you don't know what that is, not something you need to worry about, but essentially it's giving me the most editing capabilities possible. So I've done that, and I'm going to use Lightroom to make some touch-ups to some of the brightness, contrast, things like that. But the main thing we're looking for in here is going to be a perspective tool that's going to help us fix the perspective of the photographs that we took. So inside of Lightroom, on the right-hand side, underneath the crop tool, there's the geometry section. In that section, we are going to focus on what's called the upright tool. At least I think that's what it's called. That's what I'm gonna call it because it says upright right there. I wanna use guided because I want to be the one to determine where these points should go. Now, the reason we have to do this step is because when you're taking a photograph, you may not be perfectly square with the book that you're photographing, which means if you try and print that, it's gonna be a little bit skewed one way or another. This tool is going to help us force it into the perspective that we need. So with that tool selected, we'll go in and pick each of the corners of our book and tell it this is exactly where we want it to be squared to, is to the corners of this book. Once we've got that perspective, we can then crop in the rest of the way so that we don't have any of the background in our image. We're going to export this out and we just want the cover as the export. Now that you've got that down, you have to do it to the spine, the back, and then all the other books that you photographed. So I'm gonna dive in and bang this out real quick. We'll see you on the other side. With everything cropped, we're ready to throw it into Photoshop and miniaturize it. So I'm gonna grab our front, back, and side and we'll stitch them together. Looks like I've grabbed the Well of Ascension from Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. I'm gonna snap those together just like I'm opening up the dust cover of this book. And then I'm going to scale that down. Now the scale at which you drop this to or how small you want this to go is going to be up to you. I've already set a template in the background here that I'm scaling it to, and I'm keeping that aspect ratio by holding shift as I drag this out to make sure that I'm not skewing it too much. But with that being said, there is going to be some skewing. Not every book that we've photographed is going to be the same thickness or height or width or any of that. So there is going to be a slight bit of skewing. You'll see at the bottom here, I do actually have to stretch that out to fit the size that I want it to be. This is just going to keep me from having to make individually sized book wraparounds that I'm going to make later out of 3D printing. So all my books are going to be an identical size, and that is going to cause some skewing, but you're not going to notice it once we get them all small. So essentially that's all I have to do. Put them together, make them as small as I want them, and then I'm going to align them to my grid so that I can then continue to do this and print them. Well, that guy's back there editing. Here's some of the tests that I went through to determine what size and quality of print that I needed in order to get the final product that I end up with. So this is what I started with, way too small. Couldn't read it at all. It's adorable, but wasn't gonna work out for me. So I still wanted to try, okay, how far can I push this on normal printer paper? So I scaled it up, and this is what I came up with. I switched covers because that first one was a little bit hard to read anyways, but I wanted to see, okay, what does that look like on normal printer paper? And this is what I came up with. It doesn't look the worst. I can actually read some of the text on here. In fact, the title and some of the smaller text, I mean, but the darks aren't there. It doesn't look good at all. So I then switched to photo paper with high quality printer, and actually with that same cover on the first test, this is what I came up with. This looks a lot better. I can read the title. I can see all the individual design elements going on in this cover. And then I finally printed it with that Red Rising book again. And this is what I'm gonna end up doing for my final result. I can even read some of the fine print on the back of this, which is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted. So let's start printing. All of our book covers are cut out. Now we're ready to 3D print the cores. Now I went with 3D printing, because I have the machine and it gets very consistent size, quality. So that's the main reason. But I also could have went with cardboard or thin wood. Anything like that would also work. With our book cores finished printing, we can now take our book covers and wrap them around and glue them to those cores. I'm going to use a straight edge to establish a crease line or fold line for the cover. Then once I have it folded, I can grab one of our books, apply some glue to all three sides, and then glue our cover in place. I'm going to use clothespins to secure that while it dries. Now that's all left to do is the rest of our books. our books are done drying, looking great. I think all that's left to do now is build our Wizard Study book nook to house these and then put them on the shelves. Let's do it. Hold up, I can't just show you everything here. So I will be putting out a video with this entire process. Get subscribed to see that. But for now, this process is going to start by building a box, cutting out some foam, cutting that foam into strips, doing a little bit of painting, and a whole lot of other fun things that are going to turn this into an epic Wizard Study that's going to house our books. So stay tuned for that. It'll be coming out soon. For now, I think we've got everything we need. Let's take a look at the final results. Here it is, guys, my miniature audio library. It looks so awesome. I love being able to have a tangible representation of the audiobooks that I've listened to. This was such a fun project. Get subscribed. I'm super excited to show you the Wizard Study I'm building that will house this shelf and all these books. Check that out. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I won't actually see you. I'll be here working, but you enjoy it.